This is the Chiefs' official podcast network.
Take advantage of the day. When you get an opportunity in this game, you make a play. The playmakers on three. 1, 2, 3.
Touchdown, Kansas City! The Chiefs are right in the thick of it, baby! And welcome once again to this edition of Defending the Kingdom. Our Chiefs Podcast Network is brought to you by Kansas City's own 360 Vodka, the official vodka of the Kansas City Chiefs. Gets you ready for watch and listen to this game against the Tennessee Titans. 360 Vodka. And so many people have weighed in that are listening to the podcast. We've heard from the East Coast. I think your guys back in Washington when you played for the Redskins. We've heard from Frederick, Maryland. We've heard the Canadian provinces. We've heard from south of the border. We're headed there next week. So we appreciate all of you in the Chiefs Kingdom listening. We've heard from Richmond, Virginia. Yes. I'm telling you, Richmond, Virginia is weighing in here. But this week, the Chiefs, after their exhilarating victory over the Minnesota Vikings, which felt like two, as like I said on the play-by-play, 6-3 never felt so good to beat a team like that with 6 starters out and missing Pat Mahomes. Now it looks like the band will be together for the most part as the Chiefs go to Nashville to take on the Titans. But this podcast is dealing barbershop. Mitch Holthus with you, voice of the Chiefs, by the way, along with Shawn Barber, 10-year NFL veteran, a.k.a. the barbershop, a.k.a. the shop, a.k.a. Spider-Man. This podcast deals with when does football assimilate baseball? And to me, it is when you close the game. Let's give a shout-out to the 2014 Kansas City Royals. First of all, the first team that made the World Series since '85, and that team made it to me because they could close games, barbershop, like no other.
Yeah, they had a special triple-headed monster. I think we talk about it all the time.
HDH, right?
HDH, Herrera, Davis, then Holland came in. Once we entered a baseball game in the 7th inning, and we had the lead, it was basically a win. We knew that those 3 guys was going to come in 1-2-3, 1-2-3, 1-2-3 ball game. And they did it the entire year and then through the postseason. And that does have a lot of similarities to a football game. There's a point in the game where you get to that 7-minute mark before the end of the game, and there are certain ways that you have to execute on offense, defense, and special teams that you can either shut the door. We call it stepping on their jugular, right? Cutting off their air, closing the door, or do you leave the door open? Do you leave just a crack open so that team that you've been having down, that you have down, can actually come back and force you to score one more time or get another first down or make another stop and give themselves a chance to win. The great teams, the teams that end up, I think, raising trophies time and time again, are those that know how to finish and close out close ball games.
This is the first quarter of the Defending the Kingdom episode of Closing It, learning how to close. As you know, you Defending Kingdom brethren now that have been with us all year know that we break this down into quarters. The 15 world champion Royals they didn't have Holland, but they had Davis. I don't think he gave up a hit all year. But what led me to this topic with you, Barbershop, is the way the Chiefs closed the game last week against the Minnesota Vikings. It was brilliant. I watched this game twice. Usually I don't have time to watch them twice, but I wanted to watch this again, mainly because of the way the defense, the last 2 series, let's just set this up again. The Vikings, good team. They could be in the NFC Championship game. Good team, has a 3-point lead and the ball. To your point, you're going to leave a crack open, there's the crack. Whoops, shut. 3 and out in 1 minute and 13 seconds. Defended the boot, defended Cook, punt. But then the Chiefs get a 54-yard field goal, but the Vikings had the ball tied. They go get it. They go get it done. They can win the game. Boom, 47 seconds. Batted down pass, blown up screen by Dirty Dan Sorensen. Batted down pass, Colin Saunders. Pressure, Chris Jones, Ogba, and others. And the Chiefs seized the game and finished it against a Viking team that had been finishing early in the year. What did that sequence tell you, potentially, about the Kansas City Chiefs finishing games.
Man, I told you they had the heart of a champion, and that's the thing that you hope that this team has been growing toward. Not worrying about wins and losses for the first half of the season, but you want to make sure they're growing and developing into a team that has confidence in one another, trust in one another, and that's coaches and players. The coaches trust to put a player in a situation that might be tough. The player trusted when the coach puts him in that situation, he has the skill to be successful in that situation. I think when most people talk about ball games and you analyze a ball game, everybody says, hey, each ball game has 4 or 5 plays that could go either way. And whoever wins those 4 or 5 usually wins the ball game. You just rattled off almost 9 different plays that had to happen, and the Chiefs excelled and succeeded at 9 out of 9 to give themselves a chance to kick a field goal and win the game and close the door. That rarely happens in a football game, that the momentum tilts to one side that drastically over and over and over again, and that same team comes up big over and over again.
You bring up and with 4 field goals in the game, but 3 closing field goals by Butker, really. One in the second half, the one to tie it from 54, the one to win it from 44. In difficult conditions. Dustin Colquitt told me earlier this week, he said, I think it's top 3 difficult conditions in my 15 years at Arrowhead because of the wind. Really tricky winds. But let's talk about closing the game, and you've been around great kickers. When you look at an Adam Vinatieri in his prime, okay, you look at the great kickers that ever played in the NFL, those were closers. You knew, I don't care if it was a 50, 40, 56, they're going to close it and hit it. He hit 4, but 3 big-time second half, and 2 when everything's on the line.
And I think when you talk about the wind and Dustin talk, pregame, I mean, I watched a little pregame. He wasn't the most accurate. I mean, he was missing a few. He was off to the left, off to the right, not really dead center like he usually is on pregame. And to make the adjustment of going from pregame being a little bit off, a little bit not as dead center as you usually are, and then when the pressure's up and his focus gets laser focus, and he needs to perform at the highest level with all that pressure and anxiety, he comes through not only once, not twice, 3, 4 times in a ball game. I think that's the sign. That's the mark of a champ. That's the mark of a true competitor. That when with all the pressure and everything going on, he's able to just zone it on out, and it becomes just him, the ball, and that field goal, and he drilled him. He did a great job all game.
Defenses can close, kickers can close. Let's don't overlook the snapper, Winchester here in the holder with Colquitt and the protection. It had to happen 4 times.
Yes. Against
a pretty good kick-blocking team in Minnesota, but everybody had to be on to close it out. Everybody had to be on the same page and do it all right. They did it all right.
Yeah, people take that for granted, right? The snap, the hole, they take all that, they say, hey, it's all about the kicker. He has to make it. Now, all these other people, the protection, right? The other 8 guys up there lining up to protect, to keep the other team from getting it. All of those things have to work in unison just to give the opportunity for that kicker to get the ball up and past the line of scrimmage. And then he hit that ball so sweet. You just knew it was good right when he left his foot. And then to see the amount of excitement from the entire team when that final field goal went through. And our quarterback, Pat Mahomes, jumps out there on the field and starts joining the celebration. That was a big win. That was a big win after having 2 home losses in a row. You just felt that the Chiefs needed to kind of climb that mountain and overcome some things, and they did it. They did it in a big way versus the Minnesota Vikings.
And the reason they won that game, they were able to finish,
baby.
And that's what we're dealing with, finishing games. The great teams in this league just close it out and finish games. That leads us to the next point, the second quarter, dealing with this week's game against the Tennessee Titans. I mean, here they are. And interesting, so one of the things we're going to do on the radio pregame, if you listen, I had a chance to talk early this week with Eric Bieniemy, and I asked him about this topic, just getting ready for this podcast. Barbershop, his eyes lit up, and he looked like Will Ferrell with like the Odin of Fire eyes. He goes, and he just took off.
Yeah.
Okay, about closing games, how you close games in the league. I thought I struck a nerve, and you know how he is, man. When the nerve gets struck, that dude's locked on. But I want to talk about this opponent, and it brings up some history here. We'll deal with some history. in Coach Reed's first year. And one of the things I love was working with you guys on Field Pass, too, before the game, you and B.J. Kissel. I do a feature now called Story Time. It's like bring in Grandpa and tell a story. But the greatest turnaround from one dismal season to the next was Andy Reid's first year here in Kansas City, 2013. Mm-hmm. Chiefs were 2-14. It was as dark as the darkest night. When Coach was hired, things started to light up a bit at a time, like the movie Pleasantville. You know, people start turning into color every bit. That's the way it was. A 9-0 start to the next. It was the greatest turnaround in NFL history. It's why San Francisco is doing it now. And they had 5 wins last year, but it's bringing up that, oh, look at the Chiefs of 13. In the middle of that 9-game streak was a game against the Tennessee Titans. Barbershop, they were tough. But the Chiefs were able to do exactly what we're talking about. That's our second quarter here, is dealing with this Titan game, our second quarter on the podcast, Defending the Kingdom. Dealing with the Titans. And that's what I learned from Coach Reid, how you close games out in all 3 phases, because they did it, special teams that day, offense and defense.
Well, you talk about a running back coach. You mentioned Coach Bieniemy and the fire that jumps into his eye. That's the nature of the beast when you're the running back coach. You know that when you have a league and you're going into the final minutes of a game, if you can run the ball and keep the clock moving and create a couple first downs, then you get to finish the game with the offense on the field. There is no better feeling than to know your position group, your running backs. You know, he's offense coordinator now, but he's by nature a running back. He did so many great years of running the ball, not only in the league but at the University of Colorado Buffaloes. But when you know that one of your guys in that backfield is the guy that toted the rock, when the other team know you was going to run it and you still ran the ball, still grounded 3 to 4 yards to carry, and continue to get first downs, taking off that last 5 to 6 minutes off the clock, and able to raise your hand in victory after that game is over. You know that you're a better man than that other team. That kind of man-to-man, there's not so many scenarios in a football game where you get to go mano a mano. It's just, you know what we're about to do, and no matter how bad you want to stop us, we're going to run this ball down your throat and end this game with us on the field. We're not going to have the defense go back. We're going to end the game the right way. Scenarios like that is what championship football is all about. And I think Coach Bieniemy, Coach Reid, they've seen it enough times to know you have to be able to do that late in the season. You have to be able to run the ball, get tough first downs, no matter if they know you're running or not, and continue to grind that time of possession away from the other team.
Well, and people kid me when I say put the hammer down on the Monday Night Chiefs Kingdom
show. That's exactly what it is.
Or I start the fourth quarter. I say, you know what time it is in the fourth quarter? It's time to put the hammer down.
Exactly.
People are going to joke or make fun of it, but honestly, there's a message there because the best teams put the hammer down. Yep. Now let's just deal with reality here, and it goes back with past history with the Tennessee Titans, because here comes Derrick Henry again. And to me, Derrick Henry is the kid. Now, you were always the big kid in junior high, weren't
no,
you?
I was
you were the big kid.
Oh, man, I
was the
runt.
little kid.
No, I was the runt, man.
You were the big kid. The big kid was zits. He's got zits and facial hair. He's got body odor. You know what I'm talking about. He matured too soon.
I knew a couple of kids that were 6 foot since the 6th, 7th grade. So I knew a couple of big kids, little overgrown kids. I was a little skinny dude, man. I was 5'11", 160 pounds until I graduated high school.
You know they give the dude the ball every time.
Yes, you did. That's
and
right.
You jump on him and you try to get in.
And he carries you for 5 yards.
5 yards. He's going to get a gig in. And I'm telling you, Derrick Henry is the NFL's version. He's 247.
Yeah, he's been that way his whole life. He's been a big – since Alabama, he's been trucking guys and running over them. He don't try to avoid contact. He's a physical style runner. And to marry him up with a coach like Coach Vrabel, who is a physical style, like he wants to make the game a line of scrimmage game. It doesn't want to be played on the perimeter. He's not trying to go out and get himself a fast or a physical receiver. He's not trying to have a prolific passer. He wants to hand the ball off to a beast and have him run downhill, power, veer game, off tackle, and continue to have 4 or 5 yards in a cloud of dust, picking you up off the ground and tell you we're going to do it again and again and again until late in the game. You don't want to hit no more. That's the mentality of a Tennessee Titans game, and that's the mentality of their entire team.
Well, and let's be honest, some bad history here.
Yeah.
2016 regular season, Chiefs get upset. 12-4 Chiefs team lose 19-17 at home to the Titans. Why? Derrick Henry, the big kid's got the ball, and he's going to close it out. 2017 playoffs. This one gets hard, man. This gets hard for me. This is called steering wheel pounders. I'm at the red light. You're in front of me, but I'm pounding the steering wheel because I'm thinking of the 17 playoffs. Yeah, I think of Jeff Triplett's non-call. Mm-hmm. I think of Mariota throwing a pass back to himself, but mainly I see Derrick Henry. Fourth quarter, hammer time, taking the game over. Now the Chiefs are going to play him again in Nashville. Here's what I'm talking about. That you close the game out on this guy. You tackle the big kid. You take your big kids and small kids and tackle him. You close the game on this guy this time.
I think the scenario is a little bit different now. I think, in the history of our defense, we've been playing with tackles that are pass rushers, right? We honored and we took a lot of credit with getting to the passer, creating sacks. Now we got some studs in the middle now. We got Noddy and Sanders. We got guys that love taking on double teams, love holding the double team, and letting the linebackers come and relieving them. You saw him all that penetration Derek Noddy had in creating tackles for loss and having a Cook going east and west, not north and south. That's what you talk. You talk about a running back. You get a running back going east and west, sideline and sideline. That's going to be a long day for the running back. They always trying to find an avenue or a route to get north and south. Our two guys did a phenomenal job last week, and they're going to have to do a better job this week because the focus of this running game is a downhill power game. They're going to run right at your zero techniques, your one techniques, your three techniques. They're not worrying about getting on the edges as much. They're trying to get to the end zone in as few yards as possible, and that's going north-south.
Almost broke out to amen. I'm just going, amen, keep preaching, brother, because as fans, we get so caught up in sacks.
Yeah.
That's how we play fantasy football. We need something, sacks and picks. Give me something. I want a defensive front that will shut down the run and close games. And you know what? They'll get their sacks.
They'll come,
but close down the run. And the way that defensive group played last week against Dalvin Cook, especially at the end of the game. Amen and amen. Halftime of this edition of Defending the Kingdom, brought to you by 360 Vodka, the official vodka of the Kansas City Chiefs, Kansas City-based 360 Vodka. In the NFL, you only get 12 minutes. Quick is not college or halftime. Mm-hmm. You get an orange, you do your thing biologically, and then you get right back on the field. For the Defending the Kingdom podcast, those of you who follow us all year know it's 1 second. There. Now we go to the third quarter as the Chiefs get ready to play the Titans, and we're dealing with finishing. When does football assimilate baseball? The good teams finish. You put the closer on the game, game is over. Now I'm going to ask you, I'm leaning on your expertise here because I'm looking for the characteristics of a player who is built or learns to finish in the National Football League. Easier said than done. But when I say who were the finishers in your 10-year career that come to mind, who comes to mind for you that you played with, and why were they that way?
Man, first and foremost is Brian Dawkins.
Dawkins.
Hey, man, we know he's a Hall of Fame guy. We know he's a great man of faith, building better men. He has the Brian Dawkins Foundation, all those great things about him. But on the field, he was such an emotional leader. He was such a physical, he led by actions, not by words. It wasn't what came out his mouth. It was his body language. You never saw him tired or looking tired. I'm sure he was exhausted after all the energy he spent, but you never saw him physically leaning over or lying down or staying on the ground or having his head draped, looking down at the ground. He was always looking up, expecting our defense to rise up to every occasion and every moment in the fourth quarter. He knew the importance of how to win and finish each play, how to finish each drive, how to finish each game throughout the end of the season. So it starts with the play, right? You want to finish the play. So he always talked about we play through the echo of the whistle. We don't just play until we think the guy's getting tackled. We play until, not that we first hear the whistle, but until that whistle blows and there's an echo after the whistle. You want to be the last guy moving. You want to finish with yourself on top of them. You driving that running back. You never should have to worry about a running back getting away and getting some extra yardage because you pursue and you hunt as a unit through the echo of the whistle to finish every play. And then when you talk about finishing every drive, the drives that happen in the fourth quarter of a game, when it comes to play scenario, each drive is important. But the end of the drive, right before half, that has like double bonus. We know if you score right before half, that's a double bonus. But the last possession of the game, you can either tie the ball game, you can go up, you get to go. There's so many scenarios that will influence the outcome of that ball game when you're the last person on the field standing and you get to dictate how that game is finished. It's no better experience, and there's no better. It's no greater emotion that you can have to know that you were on that field and your side of the ball, whether it's special teams, offensive, defense, you finished the game and finished that drive the right way.
And you can finish it on offense, too. I think of some examples this year, the 14-yard screen pass against the Ravens. Pat Mahomes is a finisher to me.
Yeah.
People like, man, 4,000 yards, 5,000 yards, 50 red zone, touchdown. He has shown me in the NFL in his young career he can finish a game. Ravens this year, 14-yard screen, Darrell Williams, game over, first down, kneel down. The other was the Detroit game. He's got the ball in his hands. We're going to go win the game on the road against a good Detroit defense. He takes it down there and does it. The other example to me are you go look at the Super Bowl IV Chiefs championship team. Willie Lanier, Bobby Bell, Curly Culp. I'm going Emmett Thomas. There were 6 Hall of Famers on that team at all 3 levels. But a Willie Lanier, if you study that cat, he was going to finish the game. I remember the Jets at the 1-yard line. First and goal at the 1, he goes, I saw heads down. I was not going to let them concede.
Yes, sir.
We finish it right here. That's what you're talking about, isn't it?
I had a chance to actually have dinner with Willie Lanier and Jan Stenerud, and
Wow.
we talked about that experience. And we brought up that exact scenario, that drive, when the Jets got down to the 1-yard line and Willie Lanier looked at his teammate and he knew something had to happen. He saw men who were a little bit defeated. They felt sorry for themselves, and they thought that they were going to give up a score. And he had to do something. So what he did is took it upon his own shoulders. He said, I took a gap. I knew that I could jump the count. If I was offsides, it would be a half-yard penalty. But if they false started, it would cost them 5 yards, and we would have a better chance. So he said he anticipated the call, he anticipated the count, and he just blitzed the A-gap. And he ended up getting a tackle for loss, which then made it 2nd and 4. And then the defense gave them a little breath, gave them a little bit of, okay, feeling some excitement. And then they made a great stop on the running back for no gain. And that led to a 3rd down where Bobby Bell actually covered the running back. Joe Namath couldn't complete the pass, and that was the big stand. That was the stand of that game that led to that victory. And he remembers it to this day of the emotion and the leadership it took for him to at that 1-inch line to draw that line and say, hey, they get no more. They don't get another inch, not another yard. And then from a personal standpoint, him invoking enough energy and excitement to overcome whatever ailments he had in his body to let his will be what overtook that scenario. And that's an amazing part of Chiefs history.
It's the most forgotten sequence in that run of that entire season to a world championship. You're going, well, wait a minute, dude, you're living in the past. Why are you bringing all that up? Because I saw it last week against the Vikings. I saw it from that defense saying, we're down 3, punt. We tied it. Now we're going to go win it.
That's right.
And to me, that was a gigantic step forward for this defense. But we've also brought up how an offense can finish a game. We've brought up how special teams can finish a game. Now, as we enter the 4th quarter of this podcast, Defending the Kingdom episode, when does football assimilate baseball? Closing. It goes to, and Coach Reed would get mad at me, I think, for this. I think he'd make me wash my mouth out with soap. But the 4th quarter deals with finishing this season. Now, 7 games to go in the regular season. We'll just take it at that.
I know.
6 of the 7 are against the AFC. 4 are against the division. Of the 2 that are not against the division, here you go, Chiefs Kingdom fans. The last 2 are against teams with the last 2 to beat the Chiefs Kingdom in the playoffs. This week against the Titans, 17. Last week against the last year against the Pats in 18. That's what's in front of you.
I know.
How do you close this?
It's so tough for me as a player to go against how I was coached, looking at it. There's 4 quarters. Right now we're in the 3rd quarter of the season. We took care of business last week, starting 1-0. It's 3 more. We have 3 more games as part of this quarter. We don't look at the 4th quarter game. We're not looking at those last 4 quarters yet. But for this podcast, I will allow myself to go outside of my comfort zone and look at the entire second half of the season as a second half of the season and go against my breaking it down to the quarters. But 6 or 7 teams are all AFC. We know AFC games matter more because it comes to the conference tiebreakers. Only one NFC team, and that one's against the Bears. And you know that means a lot to our players and our coaching staff because one of our own is sitting over there, and we want to make sure that we play our best at Chicago. But then those 2 teams that we lost to in the playoffs, facing the Patriots and the Titans, and having a sense of revenge and retribution, and having a little bit of edge on our shoulder to pay those guys back because they ended our seasons. They ended our possible run to a Super Bowl was at the hands of the New England Patriots and the Tennessee Titans. And we have a chance this week in their home at the Titans in Nashville to get a little bit of payback, get a little bit of get a little bit of that respect back. We're earning it every week. We're doing the things we need to do on the practice field as a staff, as an organization, to earn our respect. But it would be nothing as a player, as a former player, it would be nothing more sweeter than to get a win versus a team that ended your season.
And getting guys back, the dynamic of getting guys back. I put it out on Twitter, 137 lost games from starters combined. That's crazy. And that's the equivalent of having no starters for the game and a half, and yet you're 6-3. But now guys come back. So how does this integration work in trying to finish this and close out this week's game?
Well, I think the guys that are coming back have to utilize their fresh legs, right? They should have their body should be fresh, no bumps, no bruises. So you expect those guys to be the first and second quarter like throwing gasoline on the fire. They should have some explosion and some we say the fresh legs, having some rejuvenation, and allow the guys that have been doing it since week 1 to hold on and continue to just churn and get better. But it should add some depth to the ranks. Our D-line gets a little bit deeper. We have some linebackers that are able to rotate around. We have we've seen 27. We've seen some cornerback plays of some guys. We've seen some safeties. We've seen the choo-choo number 24 get some playing time. So we have some faith in some guys, some confidence in some guys that if the starting 11 on both sides just stay healthy, you still have some question marks if the backups can even play or not. But we've had to deal with so many, as you recall, 100 and some missed quarters of football from our starters. We've had to rely through the ranks for them, the guys, to rise up and show they can play at this level, and they've done that over and over again. They've shown they can play at this level, and they have some room for growth, but now we're getting those starters back. So the depth in every room is getting back to where we're hitting on all cylinders, and there's no better time to hit on all cylinders than the second half of the season into the playoffs.
So as we close this edition of Defending the Kingdom, we've come to the conclusion you can close a game on offense, you can close a game on defense, and you can close a game on special teams. Here we go, Barbershop.
Hey, man, trust and communication. I think that's something the Chiefs has more of that than any other team in the league, and that's why we still every weekend has faith that our team can go out there and get it done versus anybody, any place, anywhere. You want to cleanse your soul as a fan? You want a little bit of how do I get ready for the Tennessee Titans game? Hey, tune into the Defending the Kingdom podcast. Allow us to cleanse your soul, to renew your mind, renew your body as you prepare for that new game that's coming on Sunday, baby.
I'm telling you, cold, hot, wet, dry, home, road, seal it, win it, close it.
Thanks for listening to the Chiefs Official Podcast Network.
10-5, touchdown! Lock it down! And the celebration begins at Arrowhead.